Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Performance Analytics and Reporting Office Hours. We're very glad you're able to join us for this session. We do this session every 2 weeks. And for those of you who are new, welcome. For those of you who have joined us before, welcome back. My name is David Van Houston. I'm an enablement evangelist for Performance Analytics and Reporting. And before we get started, I'm going to run through a few logistical items for today's session. So number one, this session is for you. This is an opportunity for you to get some fresh ideas, gain a better understanding of performance analytics and some of its capabilities, and get some practical advice from some of the world's experts in the field. They are on this call as well. There may be cases where we can't solve your technical issues or get into too many details about your case, so we may ask you to open one on high so that we can follow up offline and to cover as many questions as possible during this session. As we have many people on the line, please keep yourself muted unless you're asking a question. You can also ask questions through the Zoom's text chat, which is easier for us so that we can also keep track of it. And we may ask you to follow up questions to clarify so we can ensure asking and answer all of those questions appropriately. Please make sure to address the chat to everyone, as we have other experts who can help you answer your questions. And in order for them to see them, you need to make sure that they are posted to everyone. Please note this session is being recorded. So if you or your organization is not comfortable with that, please disconnect now. The sessions will be posted to YouTube, and the link to the playlist on the page where you registered is located, and we will follow up also with another link to the same YouTube list. Today we have Adam Stout, one of our own other enablement evangelists, going to demo Cascading interactive filters. And following this, after the demo and a little presentation by Adam, we will open up the floor for your questions. So Adam, please feel welcome and get started.
Thanks, David. So today we're going to talk about cascading interactive filters. And as David said, I'm an enablement evangelist or outbound product manager, depending on the day what our title is. So we're gonna talk about this, about what cascading interactive filters do and where they fit in. So this will be pretty quick, but we want to give you a good overview to make sure that you're using them in the right places. So it's going to be quick. We're going to talk about the basics of cascading interactive filters and then some common use cases, and then we'll get into a little bit of things just to make sure that you're aware of. So the first thing, what are cascading interactive filters? Cascading interactive filters were introduced in Kingston, and if you go to add a widget on a dashboard, you're going to see cascading interactive filter is just one of the many types of interactive filters. So you'll see that in the list. Interactive filters came out a release or two before this, and this one slipped in. So not everybody's aware about it. So we want to talk about where we get to use this. It groups multiple reference filters together and combines them so that they're dependent on each other, and each section builds on it. So I pick the first level, which then refines the choices in the second level. This is different than normal interactive filters where they're each independent. So with a normal reference filter, I may have an interactive filter on assignment group, and I may have one on assign to, but they're not related to each other. So I have all the possible assign tos in one filter, all the possible assignment groups in another, and I can pick combinations that don't return any results. With a cascading interactive filter, if I select the assignment group, I will then only see people in that assignment group. Each level is independently mapped to tables. So this is an interesting feature when you're playing with it, that I normally am going to map assignment group to the assignment group in an incident or on task. I'm going to map the assign to the assign to on task, but you don't have to. So sometimes you can use the first level to pick the second level, but really you're only looking at the second level to pick it. Let's talk about some of the use cases that come along with cascading interactive filters. This doesn't catch everything all the time, but there's some really common uses we see. So I've been talking about assignment group. So the most popular one we see with cascading interactive filters is pick an assignment group and then only show me members of that assignment group. It also works the other way. I can pick a user and show me the assignment groups the user is in. These are using many-to-many tables, and we'll talk about how that's configured. I can also do things like show me all the KBs that are applied to a task. Which KBs are being used. I want to see the incidents that have this KB. So I pick the KB and then I pick the task. Also very common is one-to-many. So the many-to-many is using a many-to-many table for both sides, but the one-to-many is where we're driving things off of one table to get to the other. So giving the group manager, I can get the assignment group. Group manager is on the sysuser group. So I pick a manager, I will then see their assignment groups. Pick a manager, it'll show me their users that report to them directly. Pick a department, show me their users. Pick a portfolio, get their project. This is not restricted to ITSM. We use a lot of generic examples, but this absolutely works anywhere across the platform. Just like with any interactive filter, make sure that your PA license covers that data. But we can use this in many places. So again, many-to-many and one-to-many are the two most common use cases. There has to be a relationship though. As part of the configuration, we are configuring, look at this field to get that field. This is very similar to breakdown relations, that it does need to be in there. And then a couple important notes to remember. As once we get through this, we'll get into a demo, so you'll get to see a little bit more hands-on. But a couple key things. This works on reference fields. It doesn't work on choices, so you can't do category, subcategory, but references. So in this example I see on the right, I have group owners, which come from sysuser. I have the groups that they own from sysuser group, and then I have the assigned to. Often we see 2, but you can do as many levels as you want that makes sense. I don't know that I've seen one with 4, but you absolutely can do it if you want. Next important bullet is this is best suited for fixed hierarchies. It doesn't handle n levels because at some point, you just like a normal interactive filter, you have to connect back. So you don't want to go manager, 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 because there's not a good way of mapping that specifically back to a user. Because a user an incident might be assigned at the low level, but given various different levels of hierarchy, you don't know that it's always a director, right? That 3 levels up is a director, or 4 levels up is a director, or 5 levels. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 5. Fixed hierarchy levels work out the best, or fixed relationships. So again, a group only has one owner. Someone is in a group. You don't have a child of a child of a child for groups. The UI control the UI control is restricted to single selects. So you see that over on the right, that these are all single selects. I cannot use multiple. I cannot select Don's groups, select database, and then select multiple people in the assignment group. It's only one at a time. If you do need to select multiple, then we'll stick with the traditional 2 reference filters, 2 reference interactive filters separate that aren't related to each other. So it only works on multiple selections at all levels. And then another button, this is like groups. You have to click apply. So I'm going to select all 3 of these, and then I have to click apply to get it to work, to actually take effect. Just like every other interactive filter, your reports still have to be set to listen to interactive filters. But whereas the single interactive filters, all the other ones, as soon as you change it, it applies. Here I must select the apply button, and that's to save performance. So as I'm drilling down all 3, I don't have to load all the reports 3 times. And one interesting thing to keep in your back pocket is that not every level needs to be mapped to a table. So I talked about this before. I may not filter. If I was using this on incidents, I may not come back and say, I want to have the assignment group.owner as Don. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But maybe what I'm really trying to get to is just selecting Bo, and these 2 aren't mapped to something. So normal interactive filters are always mapped to have the table mappings. For cascading interactive filters, you have the option of mapping them, but you don't have to do it for every one. And then as far as references go, there's docs. The docs walk through how to set up what we're going to do. The documentation is pretty good. We just want to give you a little taste of what you can do, but then you'll want to go get the documentation. I'm referencing the New York documentation, the latest and greatest. So I always recommend that. But the documentation is effectively the same for whatever version you're looking for. There were not any new changes added in New York for cascading interactive filters. Okay, and now we're going to get to a quick demo. So I'm going to log into our office hours instance. And I've already set up a dashboard for cascading filter examples. This is set up to just have a couple simple reports to show us how these are working. And I've gone in and created these, and I deleted them because we're going to build them from scratch right now in just a minute or two. So I have a very simple report on active incidents that is showing me the active incidents by priority, and I have 405 total, and then I have a list view that has those same 405. So now we're going to go and we're going to create a cascading interactive filter based on caller. So from here, I'm going to leave this open, and we're going to go over to interactive filters. And I'm going to create a new interactive filter. The interactive filter we created first is a shell that holds what's going on. This is what we actually add to the dashboard. So I'm going to call this one, if I get it right, caller, so that we know what we're talking about here. This is not necessarily a name I'd use in production, as I'm going to call it one-to-many to show that's what we're setting up. I'm going to give it a lookup name. And I'm going to make this a cascading interactive filter. So these are separate. They work very similar to reference interactive filters. They are separate. If you have a reference interactive filter on assignment group and assign to, you have to build a new one for cascading. We're not just taking what's there, but they're configured the same way. So I've created a cascading interactive filter now. And the first thing I'm going to do is I've created the interactive filter. I'm going to create the cascading filter, the first node. So I'm going to click on new. And effectively what I'm doing here is creating a reference interactive filter. So I'm going to call this one department. I don't need a lookup name. The table, where do I get department from? I'm going to get this. I'm actually going to get it from sysuser group. No, I'll get this from department. We'll pull all the departments back. The display field. So an option that you have in cascading interactive filters that you do not have in reference is what field do I want to display. This comes in more into play when we do the M to M, but right now I'm just going to select name. You're generally going to pick what the display field is for the table. And then conditions, in this case, I'm not going to have any conditions, so this is fine. So I'm going to right click and save this. And once I've created this, I now have two options. We have created a second tier in the cascading filter and target tables. So we're going to do cascading filter quickly. So my first level is department. I'm going to pick the department, and then I'm going to pick the user. Table for user is sysuser. I'm going to put active as true. That's always good to have. Gives me 605 users. And then the other condition we have here on this filter is how do I connect that to department? What is the connection from sysuser to department? So I'm going to pick from my sysuser fields, department. And that's how it knows only show the users in sysuser that active or true and the department matches what I selected. So I'm now going to select this or save this. And I'm going to select the display field, which is going to be name. Again, I'm going to match what the display value is. And I'm going to hop back over here, and we're going to throw this on the dashboard and make sure it works. So I'm going to remove this one that was my placeholder. I'm going to go to interactive filters, cascading interactive filters, and I'm going to go to my caller one-to-many example. And we'll shrink this down. And I have my departments. Yep, I have all my departments. I'm going to select development. And from development, I have just people who are in development. So I have 605 users on this instance with demo data, but I only have those that are listed in the department, in the development department. And then I'm going to select Bo and click apply. and I still have 405 and 405. And that's because although I've configured these two, I have not set my table mappings up. So what I'm going to do next is come into my filters. I wanted to make sure that it worked first. I'm going to, I'm actually just going to set it up in the, well, let's set it up here. So I'm on user. So how do I want to connect user to a table? I'm going to go to task because I want this to work for all tasks. We're going to do, I'm picking the assign to. Assign to is just very useful record. So instead of doing it on incident task and problem and service catalog task, I'm just going to do it on task, which will then be inherited by every table that extends task. And the field that we're going to map to is assign to. And just like any reference filter, we really could pick any field, but assign to is what makes sense. So I'm going to click submit. And now I have this mapping. Again, like an interactive filter, I could map this to other tables. We're just going to do tasks because that's actually going to do virtually everything I need it to do. And I'm going to change user here. That's not as descriptive as I want because what I'm actually picking is assign to. And then I will save. And then I'm going to navigate back up to department. And from department, I have to add different target tables. I have to add target table mapping. So I'm going to map this to incident as well, or sorry, to task. I'm going to pick a field, and the field here is going to be assigned to department. If I pick something else, we would get some very interesting results because what the assigned to is because the other filter, the use assigned to filter is going to assign to. So I want to make sure that these are in line, that the cascade is all going off of the same logical choice so that they're subsets. You don't have to do that, but then logically you get a little, it gets a little weird. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to switch tabs real quick, just so I make sure I pick up all the new mappings. And switch back. And now I have my 405 records. I'm going to verify that these are following. Just like every other interactive filter, the reports have to be set to follow. So we're doing that now. I'm going to select, well, we're going to leave it on department and Bo. We should have picked those up. Let's do that again. So Bo has one incident assigned to him. And if I clear this out, you don't have to pick every level. So now we're just going to do give me everything that's assigned to somebody in development. And we have 11 incidents that are there. And some of these must be missing priority. Okay, so that's how they work. Again, you can add multiple levels here. And I wanted to show really quickly one more filter, and then we'll move on. We won't finish this one out completely, but I meant an M2M table. So if we're going to handle assignment groups and users, which again is one of the most common ones, I'm going to select the Cascading Interactive Filter. We're going to call this M2M and save it to create my shell. And then I'm going to create a cascading filter. This is where it gets a little bit different. So to point out what needs to happen, we're going to do assignment group. And I'm not actually going to pick all assignment groups because I don't want all assignment groups. Well, we actually, at this level, we can. So we're going to do sys user group. The display name, the display value is going to be name. Active is true. We're going to save that. And then my child. When we get to the child cascading filter, that's where we do something a little bit different. Although I want to assign to, I'm not using sys user here. Do this here. We're going to pick assign to. The table I'm going to use is sys user group member, because this is what actually holds the relationship between the assignment group and the assigned to. So for the field I'm going to use user. And for assignment group, we're going to use group. So this table, sys_user_group_member, is what holds both of these. So now we're going to submit this. I'm going to throw it on the dashboard. I did not set up the table mapping, so this won't work yet, but we walked through that already. And I'm going to come in, remove that. I just want to show that it works. Cascading interactive filter, M to M. And here I have all my assignment groups, lots of assignment groups. I'm going to pick database. And now I only have the 3 users that are in database. And I should be able to see David. Oh, I didn't set up the mappings, but this would then filter it to people in development that are also to David. So we would see at least a couple of records here. So again, I have an M to M example. I have a 1 to M. This is not using the N levels of hierarchy. These are very fixed, right? An incident has an assignment group that we know is correct. This wouldn't pick up child assignment groups. It's going to pick up this assignment group. But it's very useful to help me filter out what I want to get to, because I don't want to look through hundreds or thousands of users. I only want to see these 20 users, right? Or in this case, this 3, maybe the 20 that are actually there. Okay, I think now we're ready to open up to questions. Isaac, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello,
okay. So we're going to go through, I see a couple questions came through in chat. So let me answer those that pertain to interactive filters first, and then we'll go from there.
Well, the 3 questions that are already there, they are not related to interactive filters so far.
Okay. Well, let's see. Does anybody have any questions about the interactive filters? We can hit those, and then
there's one.
There is one.
If it Jenna missed it, if it works with both performance analytics and reporting widgets.
Great question. These only work with reporting. If you want the similar functionality for performance analytics, you're going to look at breakdown relations. It's not 100% identical, but it's very similar to use breakdown relations to do the same type of work.
And Jason, thank you for answering. I see now in the answer that Jason actually answered the question. It's exactly what we want. So community helping the community. Awesome. +1 for Jason.
All right. You get a ticket next time for the office hours. Okay, we ready to move on to some other questions then?
Yeah, okay. The first question is from Julian. We are currently on Kingston. We have a requirement to count the number of product model from the ALM asset table, and show this for each stockroom with a list of the product model and the quantity. Stockroom, model, quantity, stock threshold, formula to show below stock threshold number. We then want to map the threshold counter from ALM stock rule threshold field. This table can't be dot-walked. So the goal is to do a formula of threshold less current ALM asset product model in the stockroom, so we know which ones are above or below the thresholds using the formula indicator, and use the PA threshold to trigger alerts. We want to ask best practices to collect data from 2 different tables for this scenario, for indicators, indicator sources, breakdown, and breakdown sources. We would like to use a scorecard for this, so we can also see changes per day. Julian, to be honest, I have to read this multiple times to understand exactly the use case and what you're trying to do. It seems like you're trying to, yeah, we might have to take it offline, this one. It will take some time to understand this.
I would put one note in that if we were looking at performance analytics, you would have to break down by stockroom, I think, to get, actually by model as well. You'd have to break down by stockroom and model. And I don't know if that's going to be too many breakdowns, depending on size. For this, I wouldn't be looking at PA necessarily. So PA would be great, maybe by stockroom or by area. I think we'd have to have something that does this in a table so that we could report on it.
he might need to create a database view to join the tables, but I'm not sure that all the requirements are for PA. Maybe a simple report could also provide answer. Yeah, that's something that needs to be investigated. And moving forward, okay, the next question was from Manosis, who was asking if he has a roll-up script, and the roll-up script seems like it's not working for one of the CIOs or for the CIO of the customer. Well, if it works for the rest of the C-level managers, I'm pretty sure there might be something in the data. You might not have all the links up to the CIO in your data, but that's something we have to investigate on the instance. If the script works for all the rest of your C-level managers, it will work for this. So it might be a problem on your data. So you might miss a link on your roll-up scripts. User might not report, it might not have as a parent your CIO.
The common thing I see with that is exactly what you said, but one thing I run into occasionally is that that user is not actually in the breakdown source. So if you have all users, you would, but if your breakdown source is limited to a department, sometimes the leader of the department is not in the department. So do verify that the user is in the breakdown source. Otherwise, they wouldn't show up right.
Yeah, and if you're not able to figure it out on your own, please raise a case on high, and our support will be able to help you with that and identify which record or number of records caused the issue. Next question is from Dima. How do I get an incomplete metrics to calculate duration from start to now, where end is nil, instead of waiting for the record to go to complete calculation equals true? Dima, this is something that we also have in our labs during knowledge. So what you need to do is to script your calculation. So whenever the end date of your metric instance is nil, you should use the variable which is called score end to calculate the duration until the time that the collection job is running. So then you will get, if the collection job runs at midnight, you will receive the difference of the duration until midnight last night. Yeah, midnight. And that's how you can.
And Isaac, now Dima wants to know, can I access then the labs from knowledge? Can I do them myself?
If you've attended knowledge this year, or I don't know, to be honest, if we have from 2018, the labs still available or not.
I believe they still are. They were up until recently. I don't know if they've retired, but.
Yeah, so everyone that attended knowledge and the labs should be able to get all the labs and all the information from our community. David, sorry?
Well, and the link is when you are logged into the community, if you click on the Knowledge 19 link at the very top, that will go to the on-demand library, and then you can search and you have access to every presentation. And then that'll link you to the lab guide as well.
Yeah, so, and guys, I think it's not necessarily that you actually have participated in knowledge, but if you have, then you can get an instance, but if you haven't, you maybe can just see the materials, or are the materials only available for those who participated in knowledge?
I believe the presentations are only available to those who attended.
All right, so that's a good answer. I just wanted to confirm that.
But this is Dima. So yeah, I recall the score end in the training. So I think I'm just gonna have to refresh my memory from the training itself. That's perfect.
Look at the out-of-the-box examples as well, because there's probably one in there that uses it. And score start and score end are awesome. Personally, I don't like any PA script that doesn't use them. The scripts are there for score start and score end for those formulas. The one caveat to be aware of is if you are doing intraday collections, it can be you have to handle that case as well. So the score end, the examples that you see are generally for collecting from yesterday, right, and for historical collections.
Yeah, and for my use case, it'll be perfect because this is just trying to see how long the ticket's been sitting and pending, and that's usually days and weeks, so it's going to be relevant. So
perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. You should find an example from the out-of-the-box stuff for incident.
Yep, thanks.
Lima, next question is from Hugo. Okay, the important question is for reports. I'm using Madrid. How would I set up a basic chart report with a drill down object that opens the drill down list report in a new window or tab? It currently loads into the same little frame in which the top level report is located. This is the case too when I put a chart report in a dashboard, same behavior. I know there is a property you can check set for click events on charts, but it does not work with drill down configurations. I'm referring to the property opens drill down information in a new window or tab. Okay. If you set the property and it doesn't work, then maybe it will be good to create an incident case on high, and then our support engineers will check it. But from what I remember, the drill downs were never opened in a new tab. But a support engineer will be able to double check it, and they can verify this to you. If it's a problem, they will link it to your case with a problem, and then you'll be notified when it gets resolved. You're welcome, Hugo. Okay, moving to the next question is from, I have a scenario. Okay, from Jesus Martinez. Okay, create a report based on work note is hard. Would you guys think it's a good idea to use a business rule to add a tag to those tickets that have a very specific note to report based on a tag? Jesus, personally, I wouldn't suggest using even tags to report, because that's another table that is using it. So if you have a specific node to be added, that means that there is that is 99% there is an automated process that updates the record with a work node, right? So if there is a requirement for you to update or to filter on these records, I would suggest creating a field depending on your use case. I don't know what type of use case, or if there are more use cases based on different work nodes should be reported differently. So maybe you can create a choice field, for example, and then report based on that field. Because tags is a text field, and well, if you automate it, you will always have the same tag, but tags can also be removed by end users on the form if you allow them to create tags. So I suppose you want something that will be robust, and you want to you don't want any user interaction to affect your reporting, right? I hope this answers your question. Next one is Harshard. Let's say incident module. When the ticket was breached, to whom the ticket was assigned? Is it possible to track through PA? Because once it is breached, assigned to can be changed after that as well. Okay,
absolutely. So you want to look at SLA breakdowns, right? This is the issue with, if you're using incident SLA and you see what's breached, you're seeing the current assignment group or the current assigned to. That's important, of course, right? Because they're the person who needs to rectify the situation. But in London, there was a new functionality added in that you have to turn on. I believe it's Z-booted on now, but if your instance was provisioned prior to London, you need to enable the plugin for SLA breakdowns. And then that's going to give you the time distribution for everything while an SLA is being active. It gives you every assignment group and assigned to how much time they had. And so the example is we have a 24-hour resolution on a P1, and I sit on it for 23 hours. And then 23 hours in, I transferred over to Isaac, and he fixes it in 90 minutes, which is awesome. But he gets dinged because he breached, right? When really it was me setting him up for failure. SLA breakdowns allow you to report on that. So you can actually look at the percentage of consumption of the SLA by team.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Adam. I'll take a look at it.
We had the previous session, so probably one of the recordings will be also in the URLs that David mentioned in the beginning about SLA breakdowns. This is updated. So the case is that we have an automation that pastes a comment when the automation is successful and one when is not, but create a report based on this is not working as expected. Yes, work notes and comments are stored in a different table. They are not stored on the incident table. That's why it's not easy and it's not actually suggested to use it. I read later on, for me, the best way out is to create a field on the table that you are updating, and with your automation, update that field if it was successful or not. This way, it will make things easier for everyone, and then you can use that both in PA and reporting so that you'll have the outcome that you need.
And for future automation, right?
Yes.
If you're relying on A to happen before B, some escalation process, you want to add a table or a field or a log that tracks it.
Yeah, and always keep in mind that later on you might have a different option, not only two options. So if you add a checkbox, you might suffer later on because you'll need to create a third field. So create a choice field, and then you can add as many options as you want based on your automation. So just because you don't want to create new fields, so it's always better to have more options in your choice field. Okay, another question, how would I join these three tables so I can see content and then the questions within that content area followed by the answers to the question? Okay, there are SN communities content, KP social, this work on content and questions. How would I do the last UI so I can see answers? I'm afraid I have to look into this. I mean, I don't know it out of my head. I don't know if, Adam, do you remember, do you recall how these tables are linked? Because we'll have to look into it and then maybe we can check it. Usually, you can find, well, the relationships are stored in the instance. So if you're an admin, you can see how the tables are being linked using the tables and columns. So let me share a bit my screen. I can show you quickly. So if you're an admin, sorry.
Well, the one thing I'll add too is, have you looked at the new content packs for community? As you're building reports, I mean, the first thing you want to do whenever you're looking at something new, particularly if it's challenging, and actually, even if it's not, whenever you have a new application, make sure that you look for the latest and greatest content packs, because they may give you what you want and they may answer questions you haven't even thought of yet. And in the worst case is they'll probably they might add some views, or you might be able to look at some examples on how to get what you're looking for. And I'm pretty sure there is a new content pack for a community. So take a look at that. And even if you're not on New York, if you want to look and see what's there, if you're looking at you have new data to look at, make sure you look at what's in New York in the release notes, because you can always go you can always go spin up a developer instance and take a look at that content pack. Even if you're not there yet, you can look at what the analytics look like, what the dashboard's set up as, get some ideas and decide, do you want to wait until you upgrade and get it, or do you want to build it yourself? But the content packs are getting better and better, and there's more of them every release. So make sure you take advantage of that.
Yep, and at the same time, I'm going to show you a bit quickly how you can do it as long as you have admin access. So if you have admin access, you can check on the instance under system definition, tables and columns. You will receive this form where you can have all the tables. Now we'll select incident, for example, and down here there is an option to show a schema map, which will give you all the links of that table with other tables around it. So you can see that the incident, well, it extends, there is incident task that is linked, and then all the different tables that are linked from task, the user table, which is linked through the user field. And you can see these options, and then you can select each of the tables and see the columns and which reference which table. So this way, usually it's the easiest way to find out relationships if you don't know it out, or if you never worked on it and you don't know how things are linked with each other. Okay, I think. Okay, so Stephen is asking a question. I think we skipped past me. Okay. I put a link to my question on community, but basically just a question about related list conditions. The out-of-the-box example is reporting on problem and finding records where there are X or more related incidents. I want to do the same thing with simple tasks. Look at a given table and report on where there are X or more related records from the same table. So
the quick, I saw this in the community, and I was curious if somebody else came up with it. I think in the community article there was a note that there's a related list with that shows those, but that's not actually a defined reference. It's not it is a related list, but it's not a reference. That should be using a relationship, which is a script that goes and gets those. Related list conditions rely on there being a hard reference from one to the other, to one record. So I don't know how you would do this with a related list condition. I think what you would have to do, if I get what you're looking for, I think what you'd have to do is add a field onto the parent of the siblings that tracked it, that count how many open incidents there were. That would track how many total how many incidents there are, and then how many open, maybe how many closed, something like that. Having those three function fields might be nice there, but a business rule on the child task that updates the parent, and then you report on the parent, just say, give me everything that's got one or more, right? Or five or more. But from the child table to the child, a related list condition won't work.
Bummer. Thank you, though. I understand.
Yeah, it looks like it would, but I believe what you're going to see is in that list they've defined a relationship in the instance, which is really powerful feature, which basically runs a script every time you load it to go get things which are not straight .walkable.
Yeah, that explains. Excuse me. That explains why I was pulling my hair out trying to figure out where the missing walkability was. But yeah, no, that makes sense. And we've done a very, very similar script on like the groups, the sys groups table to count how many people are in a group and how many of those people are active, and just write it to a field on sys group. So this wouldn't be too terribly different. Okay.
Yeah, it's very similar. If you look, I mean, the use case I see this most often on is in PPM, project management, because you have roll-ups of everything about what goes in, and that's all done with business rules on the child tables that go and maintain the parent records to make for very simple reporting and bar charting and charting of that data. If you do it as a related list condition, it can be a filter, but you can't chart it.
Yeah. Yeah, and in this case, we were just trying to actually be a bit deductive about which particular path a workflow had taken. So if we're gonna make fields and script it anyway, we actually probably will just instead of just counting it, we'll actually do it the right way and say, hey, let's explicitly throw some flags in the workflow and say exactly what path it went down and report that up to the parent. So
sounds good.
Thanks. That's what I needed to know.
Great. Thank you very much. So next question is from Jason. Are there any plans to add reports or analytics to the SAFE module in New York? Specifically, I'm looking for story point burn down, and velocity functions to help forecast backlog health, how long it will take to burn through current estimated backlog, etc. I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. I didn't check the content pack.
This is David. I've been pinging the folks, but because of the holiday season, responses are delayed and not that frequently. But they're running into some delays for releasing the app. They're moving it to the App Store, right? So some of the ServiceNow applications will be moving to the ServiceNow App Store. And specifically around Agile Safe, they're looking at trying to get as many of those of that content up into the App Store so that they can have a little bit more frequent cadence of updating as well. And yes, there are plans to including the new story burn down, epic burn down, velocity functions for that in that release. But so far, I have not heard about the release date yet. So I can't give you a definitive answer.
Yep. Thank you, David. Next question is from Dean. We might have multiple SLAs on an incident, such as if the priority changes and or if the incident is reopened. How can we show only the SLA from open to resolved? Not resolved, then reopened, then resolved again. Need to exclude the first result and report only on the second result. Is there a way to do that in reporting, or do we need to change something in the SLA module to exclude those? So then, okay, reporting actually will pick up the records as they are created. So your SLA module will create records, right? So depending on how you configured your SLAs. Personally, if you would like to have an SLA that calculates from opened to resolved, and every time that a ticket gets reopened, the SLA starts from continues actually, I would create such an SLA configuration where you'll have pause conditions which will either restart or continue the clock based on the states that you have. So if the state moves is changed from work in progress to resolved, then theoretically your SLA will stop, but then later on if it moves back to a different state in work in progress, for example, then you want the clock to continue. So I would I would create an SLA configuration just for that. At the same time, yeah, and I think that will be the best way for you to report, because you'll have it on as a related list also on your incident, so that you'll know how long it took. That's how it is out of the box at least. And yeah, and I think that's the best way out of it, to have a different SLA configuration for that.
There was a question we missed a little bit before this that I want to talk about, that had to do, I'm new to PA and have a few questions. So for those questions, the first thing I would say is make sure that you've taken some of the training. So we have the Performance Analytics Essentials class, which is a self-paced class. I think it takes between an hour and 2 hours to do it. And then you can take the Performance Analytics Micro certification. Anybody getting started with PA should take that. It helps you out quite a bit and helps explain some of the concepts. So I would do that. There's always the real instructor-led classes as well. There are two-day classes on that, but the PA Essentials is really where you want to start. And then if you have questions on top of that and you don't have a partner helping with your implementation, the community is a great resource. We're happy to answer some of the questions here, but we only meet every 2 weeks. So I highly recommend leveraging the community to just ask what's going on. Post a screenshot saying, this isn't working the way I think it is. How does this work? You'll see lots of questions get posted and lots of great answers, and you don't have to wait for us. Or you don't have to wait for 2 weeks from now.
Thank you, Adam, for not. I'm sorry for missing that question. Next question is from Swan Davis. So how would you report on when P1s and P2 incidents get downgraded? I would need to know the when, who, what was it downgraded to, and for how long? Is there a metric for this? Thanks. There is no metric out of the box that does this. We have out of the box a metric on state, so you can see the different states of or the different priorities, I'm sorry, for your incidents. But if you want to capture specific downgrades from P1 to any other priority or from P2, then you'll have to create your metric based on the use cases you want to capture. I suppose you don't want this to happen too often, so you can customize, you can script your metric to pick up all the changes from P1 and P2 to priorities that are less than that. And then you can, the only issue that you'll have is that each metric definition captures one field value. So if you want to get who actually downgraded the incident, and if you want to, I think that's the only thing that you mentioned, right? Because the duration is captured in your metric instance. So if you want only the who, then you can create it You can script it and you can get a value out of it. The script needs to capture the specific changes though. So in your script, in your metric definition, you have to set up that if priority 1 was P1, the new value is less than P1 because you might have P0s, for example. Some customers do. That's okay, but if you downgrade it, then you have to make sure that you capture that change from P1 to P2 or 3 or 4, or from P2 to P3 and 4. And then you will have all the records that you will require.
And metrics allow you to do that. If this is a key part of your process, though, particularly the knowing the why, the who, if you just need the who and when, metrics are good, and the how long you definitely would get. But the one thing I would look at if I wanted to know why it was happening would be to create a table of downgrades, which when you want to do that, make the form ask the user, why are you doing this? And what, what are you doing? And make them really think about it and understand that you're not just changing a field and sneaking through, but that it's clearly logged whenever P1s and P2s are downgraded. That would also allow you to automate any workflow, any approvals, any notifications that it happens. You could do some of that ahead, but to me, downgrading P1s and P2s is sensitive, and I might want to log that specifically to track what's going on and report on that, right? Make it very easy to report on who's downgrading, what teams are downgrading, what incidents are being downgraded, maybe snapshot some of what the other fields are, to do some analysis on that. So if that's a sensitive subject for you, you may want to elevate it out above and beyond just metrics.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. And I think this was the last question.
Okay. All right. That was the last question. Let's close up. We're nicely in time with only a couple of minutes to spare. So thanks, Adam. Thanks, Isaac, for all of your great answers. Thanks, folks on the community for asking the questions, right? And answering between the amongst yourselves. That's greatly appreciated. Please visit the community. Thank you for joining us in this session, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks, which is the 28th of August. As a reminder, this session will be posted to our YouTube playlists in the near future, along with all previous recordings. So if you missed one, make sure that you look at them and see if there's a topic that you like and that has your interest, and you can review it. In the meantime, please leverage the community for your questions to get input in between our office hour sessions. In the community, you will also find links to available trainings for performance analytics, which includes the new free self-paced performance analytics essential training. And last but not least, I hope you all have a great remainder of your day. Thank you very much, and see you next time.